Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. I'm so delighted you're here with us today. And as you can see, I have a wonderful guest here with me today. Her name is Allyson Scammell, and I'm super excited to have a conversation with you about all the things I'm passionate about. But before we do that, I would love for you to introduce yourself. One thing I can say, we got connected through podcasting, obviously, and also human design. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. You know, I always say that I had a very sort of 3D life for my first 32 years and didn't know about spirituality or intuition or kind of had vague ideas about it. And then when I was 32, I had a near-death experience and it blew me open spiritually. It was like the light was completely off and it got turned on to full blast. And from that time, I kind of had to really relearn how to live. It was like a really being a born again experience and went on this path of discovery of who am I now that I have full access to all this stuff that I did have. It was just dormant inside of me and it
Mm.
got activated and kind of blown open in this very jarring kind of way. And it took me years, and I'm still integrating for sure what happened. But on that journey of discovery of truth of who am I and how I'm in alignment and high expression of my mission, of my purpose, of who my authenticity, I found myself eventually teaching and coaching soul guided coaches, healers, creatives mostly. Um, I tend to attract folks who are in the service space, who are looking to run a business that really makes an impact, that generates revenue, that feels very aligned and authentic. And I tend to attract people who are truth seekers and they're not going to trust everything that is just given to them. And if something doesn't feel right, they're going to question and they're really looking and, discernment is going to be such the coin of the realm as we move
Mm.
forward with technology and AI and knowing what's true and what's not and how to discern what's true for us. So that's how I arrived where I am here, kind of my journey in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love this. Especially what's stood out. I mean, with the AI today, right? There is so much information out there. What's actually your take on that? Because I always say that AI can never replace your intuition, right? That's the one thing. And I think that's why we live in an age where intuition is going to become your biggest asset, right? Because information is just available everywhere.
1000%. I think intuition is going to be, I call it your spiritual intelligence.
Yeah.
And, it's what I teach about the five spiritual gifts. And the first one, and I mean, really the most important one in the sense that the first one is intuition. And
Mm-hmm.
they're all equally important, but I always start with intuition because if you don't have access to that, or if it's very blocked or cut off, it's very hard to understand what's going on with the other four, which is healing, manifestation, teaching, and leadership. So I always start with intuition.
Mm.
And with the dawn of AI, I went on this whole journey with AI where I was very, very anti-AI, like a lot of the people in the spiritual community. But it
Yeah.
wasn't because I have a defined head in Ajna in the tropical chart.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love learning and I love my brain loves to learn and crunch
Mm-hmm.
and analyze. I love it. And so I like love I was like the idea of AI, like, oh my God, I have access to all this information. I was like kind of that part I find exciting. The thing that I was so anti against in the beginning was intellectual property protection for
Mm.
entrepreneurs who are doing interesting stuff that deserves, that it doesn't all just get shoved into the hive mind that AI companies are pulling from. So that was my big thing. And it's
Mm.
still my big thing. But I
Mm.
eventually broke down and started using it. I was like, oh my God, this is such an amazing tool. But then as I used it more and more, I started to notice, like, whoa, okay, we really need to be responsible with this tool and it's only going to get more sophisticated,
Yeah.
um, so that it doesn't steer us in directions that we don't want to go and it doesn't start to cut off of our creative, juices, our authenticity because we're too reliant on it. So that's why I really feel like I am, kind of I'm not pro AI. I am embracing of AI, but in an ethical way where
Yeah.
we have our intellectual property protected, but also in a way where higher self is always in the lead and our discernment is always very on, and that we don't delegate too much to our AI bot, and that we're still on the leading edge of creation, because that's what we're here to do as humans, is to
Hmm.
create and be in service to others.
Yeah, I'm so with you. I think it's all about discernment, right? And like anything, just like food too, we can overindulge in something, but then a little bit of it is fine. And I find too with AI, when I also have a very similar journey than you, and I started to notice I have to be very careful like how I use it. I do believe it's very powerful to amplify your gifts and get your message out there in an easier way and automate things, right? That take away from this like busy workload in some way so that I can spend more time in creativity and intuition. But when we use AI too much, we are no longer using the muscle of our intuition, right? So we have to be very, very like you say, discernment is a big one with that. Which I find interesting, that's the 13th gene key. And it's about empathy and discernment, and it's also all about listening to your own hearts. So we have to be very discerning what we are listening to and letting us influence. So I think it's yeah. But we can go, no, from one extreme to the other, and then we kind of find our middle way of how we can actually use it because the technology is obviously there for us. So before we go into, which I'm super curious to learn more about the five, like how you talk about it, the five core spiritual gifts, which is really the core of your work, right? And your mentorship and everything. What led you into the world of human design and what did it for you? And because it's also, I think, a big part of your work.
Yeah, so the nature of my near-death experience was really it was a unique. If anybody wants to hear the whole story,
Yeah.
um you can listen to it on my podcast, because it's a kind of a, it's not your typical, like, I didn't just get like hit by a bus and
Mm.
there was a lot going on. um and so anyway, so if you're interested, you can hear the whole story on my podcast, Soul Live Radio. But what I really downloaded from that experience was this concept of these core gifts. Now, of course, we
Mhm.
co-create with the divine in an infinite number of ways, but they all kind of fall into four gifts, and these, or excuse me, these five gifts. And these five gifts work together, and they form an energetic alignment process, and they help us align to our intentions and our purpose and
Mhm.
our highest expression. So for me, that's just like, it was downloaded to me in my NDE. And then when I started working with clients, it just sort of organically came out of me. And understanding how to work with these gifts is just like who I am. It's like, you know, what I teach my clients is, if there's something you're really good at that you dismiss as no big deal, it's probably pointing you to your genius, or like
Yeah, I agree.
your true gifts. And I think
Mm.
this is something that just comes so naturally to me. But then at a certain point, so of course I could just teach by, spiritual gifts all day long, and that could be great. But at a certain point, around the same time as you, 2020, I found human design. And at first I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I
Mm.
started to hire human design readers. And I even brought a human design coach onto my coaching team. And then I sent my clients to her to do the human design reading. I don't know why,
Mm.
but there was this something in my brain that was like, I don't learn about human design. I go to other people. Of course, this was before AI could provide
Mm.
you any sort of information about it. I would go to other people. But then at a certain point, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I outsourcing all of my human design? And then I started to learn it. And we have the same
Mm.
teacher, Karen Curry Parker. And when I found her, I was like, oh, yeah, she's like taking human design to the next level and
Mm.
combining spirituality. This is what I am. This is resonating. And then at a certain point, my higher self was like, all right, now we want you to go deep and we want you to become very knowledgeable on human design. So I'm kind of in that phase now where I'm really going to the next level of my own learning, but it's been interesting because the soul blueprint stuff is just automatically me. Like I birthed it. Like I didn't birth it. I co-created
Mhm.
it. Source birthed it. But I think you get what I'm saying. And just,
Yeah.
but then the human design is something, it's like learning a foreign language. And it has been deep and rich and interesting, but I felt the calling from higher self because it provides such a great map. It's a map, right? And there are different types of
Mhm.
human design maps, as you well know, but it's a great map, especially if you're on the earlier start of your journey and you want to understand what your baseline is, a place to
Mhm.
start to understand your energy. And excuse me, having spiritual gifts alone is great. But if you have the navigational tools without the map, that is
Mhm.
challenging. And if you have the map without the navigational tools, that is also challenging. So, what I came to realize and higher self guided me to the fact that we all need both the map that resonates most with you or maps and the tools to help you really understand it and embody
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, I love it. And I find it so fascinating, right? Because just like you channeled the soul blueprint, is it called the soul blueprint? Yes. Um,
Yes,
hold on, I also need a sip of water.
me too.
Ra also channeled human design, right? And it wasn't just for him, obviously, because so many people, like we discovered, I think I always feel like it found me in some way because I was never looking for human design. Somehow it appeared magically. And I find always like the really profound things in my life, they come and then you respond. And so, but how this tool that he channeled, right, has been touching so many people's lives, and then something that you already downloaded now through somebody else's download, which is all the divine, right? All together, but also shows us how we're interconnected and how we can do it ourselves in some way, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, Ra's story, he called it The Voice and he downloaded for 7 days and 7 nights. Aspects of that really resonate with me because I had the near death experience and I didn't realize it at the time. I don't
Mm,
really know Ra's story very well. If he lived like before that moment, a very 3D like non-spiritual life, or if he'd always been sort of spiritually
mm,
open.
mm.
But for me, I had not been spiritually open. I had just started reading like Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer
Oh,
and
really?
Esther Hicks. And thank God I read Esther Hicks and learned about
Mm,
Abraham because that I had a collection of consciousness visit me during my NDE. And had I not read the Esther Hicks books, I mean, I literally had just read them and that was all fresh in my brain. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a consciousness like Abraham.
mm-hmm,
And um, so, but I had this sort of initial download, and then I started just living my life. And this methodology started to just get born organically when I was working with clients. It would just like come out of me.
mm,
I wasn't planning it. It just all of a sudden it just happened. And clients were like, whoa, what did you just do? That blew my mind. And so then I kept working on it and I kept
mm,
integrating it in my work. And then I had sort of a second download. It was 2022, and I was supposed to go to Colombia, the country of Colombia, for a
mm,
business mastermind retreat with the coach I was working with. And so I had flown home. I'm originally from the United States to South Dakota. I had planted my daughter with my parents and got her set up. I don't, travel without her very often. So it was kind of a big deal. Had the whole infrastructure in place so she would be taken care of while I traveled, had everything ready to go. And then the day before I was meant to fly, my sister had tested positive for the coronavirus. I
mm.
had no symptoms, but I took a test and I was also positive.
Oh gosh.
And to get into Colombia at the time, all people had to produce a negative test dated within the last 24 hours. And I took like 3 tests and they were all negative, all positive. So
Mm,
I couldn't go. So there I was with 7 days. I had childcare laid on. They had her going in summer camp. They were like, hey, we got your daughter. We don't want you around. They were like looking forward to it. I had no clients. I had nothing but 7 days of space. And any business owner or any mom or any mom and business owner knows that, yeah, you almost never get that. You never have
Yeah.
just 7 days of space.
Yeah.
So in that 7 days, I went out. I was at the family farm where I grew up, and my dad has this prayer rock, which is actually also an energy vortex. So I was sitting out on the prayer rock, listening to the meadow larks, watching the cattle and the horses, and then it just started to come to me. I don't even know like the actual like methodology of how I was going to teach it. I was doing it myself, but how could
Mhm.
I make this a methodology that someone else could learn and do? So it just started coming to me, just kind of flowed in. It was very natural. It wasn't like an intense experience. It was light, airy, free. And then I would go home in the evenings and I mind mapped it. I just started mind mapping the whole thing. So, like, spiritual gift one and the different ways, and then two and three, and how
Mhm.
they come together. And it all just flowed out of me. And it was one of those things, but by the time it was done, I had pages and pages and pages of information, and it felt like I hadn't done anything. It felt like I had written 3 words. It just like,
Mhm.
it was one day it wasn't there, and then one moment, boom, it was all there. I don't even know how I did it. And then that was how the methodology got birthed.
I love it. Yeah, you became an effortless channel. You let it flow through you. And that's also why I don't know if you watched the Michael Jackson movie that came out recently, but he was talking also about all of his songs, how he was like, yeah, I'm not doing it. I'm just allowing it to come through me, right? I always feel that is how it's designed to be when we can live our yeah, unique blueprint and how God created us here on earth with the unique gifts and talents we were given. And the mind is such a powerful tool, but we often use it in ways where we're forcing our way into something that's not really our path until through these beautiful tools, right? That we channel and download and human design and all this stuff that kind of brings us back home. We're like, ah, that's what I'm here for. So that's powerful. So, with that, I would like to hear more about these 5 spiritual gifts. I already know intuition is the first one, which I think, I mean, you might have a point, right? That is kind of, if we don't have that, all the other ones are not going to be as powerful. But I also find that it's extremely hard for people. Like, how do they know what's your intuition? What's your fear? Like, how do you discern? And how do you work with people to activate your intuition more, build the muscle?
Yeah, it's such a big question. We have so much wounding, especially light workers, around, connecting to our own intuition, expressing our gifts. We all have a witch wound where in a past lifetime we were persecuted for expressing our spirituality. And, some of us have like real wounding, right? Like we were literally killed, or maimed, or something bad happened to our family for expressing spiritual gifts. I mean, I see it all the time with my clients. It's such a theme. So it's no wonder that when we get to this lifetime, we don't have that sort of threat to our survival, but it's still going to show up as a pattern. And on a subconscious level, this feeling like, oh, if I trust this inner voice, if I express my spirituality publicly or to my loved ones, something bad is going to happen to me or to a loved one. And this is something that I've healed countless light workers on. And so, that's where I would take you to the second spiritual gift, which is healing. And so,
Mm.
if the first spiritual gift is intuition, your ability to communicate and receive insights from the divine, the second is to work with the divine to heal yourself energetically.
Mm.
So these are spiritual gifts. So it's all a non-physical aspect. But of course, when you heal your energy, you will feel your physical body healing as well. So I would start, we all second guess our higher self, or we all resist the calls, right? So if you're resonating with that, or you're someone who feels like, well, I don't know if it's my intuition, maybe it's my brain, maybe I'm filtering, I would start with the healing. I would start with, what do I need to release in order to just
Mhm.
surrender? And that word gets used a lot, surrender, but I have a very specific definition for it. Surrendering to higher self, or to your intuition, is shortening the gap between receiving the message and integrating its call.
Yeah.
So, so instead of like higher self is calling you to what, be more authentic, but you're resisting because you're scared. It's a fear you're resisting to confront, which is normal. We're humans, right?
Mm.
But when we surrender, we say, you know what, it's scary, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to heal what needs to be healed. I'm going to move through the fear and I'm going to be my authentic self. So, the greatest thing to access intuition, which is going to improve your ability to discern, is to heal. Because that's the thing. It is a block, it is blocked energy that is cutting you off and jamming your connection to the divine, to your higher self.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. So we have intuition that is highly, and I think that's also now, which brings me kind of back to how human design, my audience will know this already. Like the five types, I see them very like we are all of it in some way, right? Depends on what situation we have. And I think your five core spiritual gifts, because intuition and healing, they're interconnected, right? One doesn't exist without the other. I mean, yeah, it exists, but for it to fully function, it's like this dance, you know? So then we have also, what is the next? We have intuition, we have healing.
We have manifestation, and some of my clients have enrolled in all of these manifestation courses, and they're like, they were terrible and I hate the word manifestation. So if that's you, you can also call it your gifts of conscious creation, whatever
Mhm.
lands for you, because we're always manifesting.
Yeah.
We manifest with every breath. But the spiritual gift of manifestation is really about conscious creation, like creating the thing in
Mhm.
your experience as a higher vibration. It's a higher resonance, right, than what we currently have. There's a higher alignment, higher joy, higher abundance, higher love. And
Mhm.
so the spiritual gift of manifestation is that ability to tap into that future potential timeline, because it's all potential, right? When we tap into the
Mhm.
quantum field, we're tapping into the potential of a future potential timeline that's in higher alignment to your gifts, to your truth, that holds more, that has that ability to hold a higher frequency, a higher bandwidth, if you will.
Mhm. I
And
love
so
it
that's what we use our spiritual gift of manifestation for.
because I mean, I think just this topic of manifestation, we could talk about hours because I also have been talking a lot about this also on my podcast. So the old school manifestation, which doesn't resonate with me at all, is this like, what do you want? Keep focusing on it and go for it and almost force yourself it into existence, right? Which is totally, and that's actually human design helped me with that because that all comes from the ego, from the mind. It's what I think I want or need, but it's not what's in my highest good, right? So I think, and that's what I gather your manifestation is all about. It's all about surrendering to your highest timeline and allowing it and using your intuition because your intuition, I think, is your pathway to this timeline, right? Again, they're all interconnected because I think the most important is this is also something head center. We learned this in human design it's here to ask questions. I wonder what's in my highest good, right? I think that's a much more powerful manifestation mantra than I want this car and I want to make it happen. I'm like, and then we get it, and that's also why we keep staying unfulfilled, right? Because so I call this ego manifestation, and then yeah, soul manifestation or aligned manifestation. So
There's definitely two different things. It's something I teach about in Soul Blueprint, and I take you through the
mm,
energetic frequency of it because we're all energy at any
yeah,
given time
yeah.
and we're vibrating, and ego-led intentions aren't terrible.
So
I am trying to lose weight and or whatever, be fitter and more vital, have more vitality, but I really want ice cream. My ego really wants ice cream after dinner tonight. I mean, it's
yeah,
not like, I mean, there are worse ego-led intentions, but let's say it's
yes.
having dessert when you're trying to be
Hmm.
healthier. It's just not, it's not going to raise your frequency unless that, so that means you're not going to feel more joy or alignment or connection
Hmm.
unless your higher self is calling you to the ice cream. And I think what happens often with light workers is the higher self is saying, yeah, have a scoop or buy that expensive handbag. And their brain
Hmm.
comes in and says, well, no, that's not spiritual or that's not healthy. So
Yeah,
as
that's
long
true.
as the heart is leading the way and the
Exactly.
intentions, like that's good, what's going to get you to those higher vibrations.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that like that too. Like ego is always like what is like mental, more mental, and what soul is, it just comes from the heart. And but then the mind may be like, "Oh, I shouldn't eat ice cream, or like exactly, or I shouldn't
Right.
have luxury things, whatever, because it's not spiritual. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I
But
have a client who grew up in generational poverty and then she finally started making money and she was just like having a really hard time with it because she
mm,
was like, I can't buy anything, I can't do anything. And she was just hoarding her money. Because she's like, well, tomorrow they could if we I could all lose it and I have to hoard it to give it to my kids and hoard, hoard,
mm,
hoard. And she was the money was like not making her happy. And I was like, well,
mm,
let's see what your higher self has to say. And her higher self was saying to purchase this luxury handbag that she had been eyeing for a really long time and she wanted a new handbag and it was
mm,
all the things and she's like, but I know it's my ego. And I took her through this process and I can always tell when it's heart or head. And I
yeah.
was like, that is 100% your higher self calling you to invest in that
Mm,
handbag. And it's a symbol. It's a symbol that you have broken that
mm.
vow of poverty that's been in your generational lineage for so long,
I
and you
love that.
need to buy it and you need to feel the joy and the confidence and how it feels, how it looks, and just be in those frequencies of confidence and
Mm,
value, you
yeah.
know, and deserving.
Yeah, I think that's really key, no? The joy to actually allow it, receive it, and let it be okay. Because it's not all or nothing, right? Yeah, we can mindlessly from ego just chase luxury things and but there are times where that's exactly what you're being called to do. Exactly. Yeah, I love it.
100%.
Awesome. So we have intuition, we have healing, we have manifestation, all tied together. What's next?
Next is teaching, and this
Oh, my favorite, my
transcends.
favorite. Tell me more about that.
I love this gift.
Oh
This
my
is like one
God.
of my favorites.
Yeah, I've been wanting to teach us. I
Yep.
mean, I'm a teacher now, but I even in high school saying I'm gonna be a teacher. Yeah, tell me.
Yes, yes. So it transcends the classroom and it can be sort of classic teaching the way you and I do. I mean,
Mm,
spiritual teaching, the way,
yeah.
whatever. But it's really about illustrating a new or different or higher way of living being. It's that where you're really, I say with spiritual gift of teaching, it's three energies coming together: the energy of your unique genius. So those are unique abilities you were
Mm,
born to share, that conscious sun energy in human design. Um, and then it's source, it's higher self. You're bringing it down from source. You're connected in with the divine, and then it is a soul audience. It's your teaching usually involves transmitting to someone else, but you can be your audience.
mm,
You can be the client of your spiritual gift of teaching. So it's not always giving it to others. Sometimes we're giving it to ourselves or illustrating it back to ourselves. And what I like to say that it's fueled by, this process is fueled because spiritual gift of teaching isn't like, oh, I am naturally good at, for example, I have an intuitive understanding of a soul blueprint. I'm good at it. So that's great. Now I'm just going to go take a nap. There is in this aspect of it, this idea of the repetition
mm,
where you do it again and again and again, so you actually get really good about it. It's not just natural talents. There's
mhm,
also this mastery that comes in spiritual gift of teaching where you're working with your gifts over time and there's this
yeah.
repetition. And so what I say is the repetition is fueled by joy
Yeah, which
because
is
you can't
the
it yeah.
Gate 58 is called The Joy of Mastery, no? In the quantum human design. I'm very familiar with that energy. It's like we're building a habit, right? Yeah, we have the gift, but if we don't continuously use it, it's not something we're gonna continue using. It kind of stays dormant. Yeah.
It's like raw
Mm.
channeling human design and not telling anybody about it.
Yeah. And not
And
writing books and not teaching about it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it would
Mhm.
have died with him. And,
Mm-hmm.
using a human design word, that mutation,
Mm-hmm.
this is part of that sort of mutation process that we use our spiritual gift of teaching. you know you get it from source, and then to use human design, traditional human design language,
Mm-hmm.
and then you introduce it to the tribe, and then it gets introduced to the collective.
Yeah.
We're using our spiritual gift of teaching as we're mutating these ideas, and we're trying it again and again and again. And you have to have that repetition for it to be tested and integrated and tried, and then introduced,
Yeah.
those mutations that are meant to
Yeah.
get introduced and then to the
Yeah.
collective.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. So now we have intuition, healing, manifestation, teaching, and what's number five?
And fifth and final, which my students always, I think, feel the most relieved, because in Soul Blueprint, the first 12 weeks is a little bit like sipping from the fire hose. I offer a lot of information. I always ask higher self, do I need to like put less information? And I always get no, because there is this sort of like
Mhm.
activation. It's like this shock, kind of in a good way, shocking them
Mhm.
activated, that is part of the process. And it's not to say you have to learn it and understand it all, but it's like it's a lot of data. And then the last gift that I always introduce is leadership, which is just your true essence. It's just your being. Is this like divine feminine energy of embodying and being and connected to higher self, and you're not doing anything. It's very sixth line in human design. You are teaching and leading, more leading, activating, motivating from the power of your being. And five lines have it. They all the profiles have it, but I
Yeah,
think five
but
and
it's
six
most
have it in a
the
special kind
sixth
of
line
way.
especially. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's just leading through being.
Yeah.
And some people really have this powerful, and probably the six lines, but I can even just feel it in a client. Some of us have like a spiritual gift that comes, we have all of them and we're using them all the
Mm-hmm.
time without realizing it. But some people have this spiritual gift of leadership that's like the sixth line, that it's like, I just feel it. I just like, they have it in a powerful way. Like, for
Mm-hmm.
example, I was working with a client who has this really powerful access to her spiritual gift of leadership, and it's all about authenticity. It's just being you, without the masks, without the filters, without the
Mm-hmm.
pleasing. And she was talking about how she just wants to make enough money where she can feel like the billionaire philanthropist. She's not saying she wants to earn $1 billion in revenue, but she wants to have that feeling where I have so much to give back. I can care for my own needs and my family. So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
like living like a monk, but I can just give back so freely and generously. And when she said the words billionaire philanthropist, it just activated me. And I was like, oh my God, I want that too. And she inspired me and put me in this new frequency. And all she was doing was talking about her own story. She had no idea
Mm-hmm.
what was on inside of me. And I went away from that session. I was like, oh, I should have paid her, um,
That's
because
funny.
I was so activated into this new frequency of philanthropy. And it's like I was like reevaluating how I want to give back, scholarships, donating money, all these things. And
Mm.
that's the power of this gift. And my clients, after all this new information, we get to leadership, and it's like all you have to do is be. If you're having a hard time doing that,
Yeah,
easier said than done. Of
yeah,
course,
yeah.
we've got some
And
healing to do, but
that's also
it
why
is
I
a
mean
sort
it's
of
the
relief.
last thing because it's almost like a cliche. Just be yourself, right? It takes some time to get there, and
It
also
takes time.
know the value that just your presence brings, right? It's not
Yes,
always like what we're saying, what we're doing. It is the energy we bring into the room and then how we allow that to activate others. Yeah, beautiful.
100%. And I like to say that actually manifestation and leadership are two sides of the same coin, in that when we manifest, we're
Mhm.
tapping into a future potential timeline, and we're noticing, who are we? Who am I
Mm.
being in that higher timeline? What am I resonating
Mhm.
at? And then you want
Mhm.
to ask yourself, and getting back to the idea of asking questions. And Soul Blueprint is a lot of asking questions, which kicks off a co-creative process with the divine so they can get you the guidance and direction you need. But the question is, who am I being in higher alignment? And then how can I start being that higher aligned person more and more
Mhm.
today? It's not having it all figured out. It's just spending a few minutes more today than you did yesterday in that higher alignment.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing these five spiritual gifts and how they're all interconnected and sharing your gift with the world, right? Because I know it does take courage. And like you said, the teaching, the repetition, because sometimes we feel like I have this all the time, right? Where we're like, whoa, what's the big deal about it? What's so special? Because I always think that what I know, everybody knows, but they don't. And there's a reason why you have been giving this wisdom, and it's not for us to self-contain it, but to share when it feels aligned. So, with that, it's a question I always ask. What's one piece of wisdom or advice that you feel intuitively guided to share with the audience?
I am feeling into your audience using my spiritual gift of intuition. And I very much feel like there's listeners who don't realize just how sophisticated their intuition is. And um, I just want to say that you really can trust it. I mean, the listeners of your podcast, I can feel, are very intuitive and very highly connected. And so I invite you to really up level or expand or push out the outer edges of your trust and surrender to your higher self because it's more accurate and sophisticated than you realize. So
Hmm.
if you've been thinking about like, oh, I want to use my intuition more with clients, but I don't know, what if it can't be trusted? Try it. Just try it. Tell your client, I'm getting an intuitive,
Yeah,
insight. Do you want to hear about it? And if they say yes, share it and then see how it lands. If they say, oh, well, no, it's not landing. Okay. Like it's just an intuitive insight, but I have a feeling it's going to eventually land.
I
But
think so
just see if
too.
you
Yeah,
can, yeah, see if you've noticed where you're holding your intuition back, where you can just start to really surrender in and realize that it's that the things that you think are intuitive, but you're not sure are very, very likely are.
yeah, yeah. We talk a lot about intuition here. I love that. And I think many had to hear that. So it's time to act on it. And next, before we finish this wonderful episode, how can people get in touch with you? And also, I'll make sure definitely to share the Soul Blueprint, the link in the show notes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, I have my own podcast, Labor of Love, called Soul Alive Radio, where we talk about all spiritual gifts, human design, Sleeping Phoenix era, spiritual intelligence, AI, all the things. And then you can find me at my website, AllysonScammell.com. And then I offer a free training video where I teach people how to run the human design charts of the various components of their business.
Cool.
So you can see the design type of your signature platform or your offer or your business itself. And if you're interested in that, you can get it for free at AllysonScammell.com/chart.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to talk to you. I love how we're like, we do such similar work, but in such a different way still. That's always shows like our uniqueness, and we can obviously talk for hours and days about this and like not get tired of it. So yeah, thank you for your work. Thank you for sharing your gifts with everybody. And I had so much fun listening and learning from you.
Thank you so much. And definitely likewise.
Thank you. And you listeners, thank you for being here as always. And I'm excited to be back with you on the next episode. Bye, everyone.